With the recent major updates to No Man's Sky, including Relics and going back to Worlds Part 2 and perhaps even further back to Worlds Part 1 and even a couple beyond that, it is becoming a bit more clear that No Man's Sky is starting to have a brand new purpose alongside it being an awesome space exploration game that we know it to be. The more recent major updates to the game are definitely being influenced from the outside more and more these days, so let's go ahead and get stuck in as to why. So what is this so-called newfound purpose that No Man's Sky has been given for the last almost 18 months, I would say? Well, it's an unofficial purpose, might I add, but No Man's Sky is still evolving, and by the sounds of it, will be doing so for a few more years, but in a nutshell, that newfound purpose is that of a live testing environment for Light No Fire features, or possible Light No Fire features and new technologies being used in the game. And this isn't just me speculating either, because Sean Murray himself has said about it last summer, and this is a direct quote. 6 months ago, we announced Light No Fire. It's this crazy ambitious game that we've been working on it for years, and we've learned so many things, and it feels like we're almost bringing this technology back from the future. And what that quote means basically is they're using certain technology for Light No Fire, like brand new state-of-the-art stuff, and then porting it back to No Man's Sky, where they can both evolve No Man's Sky, which has been great, but also just perhaps as importantly for them, to see how this technology performs in a live production environment with thousands of real players. Honestly, like in some senses, it's a genius stroke because it will likely lead to Light No Fire having a significantly more stable launch than the botched one of No Man's Sky back in 2016. You can see some of these technologies and perhaps features are now in No Man's Sky as part of these major updates that have been released since the initial Light No Fire announcement, which was back in December of 2023. And none are more prevalent than the ones from the two major world updates, perhaps more so in Worlds Part 2 than Worlds Part 1 because they've had more time to work on them. One of the most obvious ones, I think, would be the overhaul to the oceans. So, for example, the sheer depth of the water worlds in No Man's Sky is ridiculous. Like previously, the depth of the water on planets, even with large oceans, wasn't that much. I think the deepest ocean I ever saw prior to these updates was 150 U deep, which is absolutely nothing in comparison to what they're like now, where they can go well beyond 1000 U deep. And you can find all sorts of weird and wonderful things down there as well. And further to those water enhancements, there have also been some significant environmental enhancements made in No Man's Sky that feel like they were initially maybe designed for Light No Fire as well and then ported back to No Man's Sky. So I'm talking about things like storms where the water goes from calm to having big waves, your ship having effect over the water. So Light No Fire would be a dragon, you can see it flying over. Clouds are gathering, winds blowing, improved atmospherics all around, to be completely honest. And the new technology they're using for Light No Fire can bring this all together in a way that wasn't previously possible a few years ago. It's highly likely we'll be getting these sorts of environment improvements in Light No Fire as well, so roughly know what to expect in that regard. Like, even if you look at the latest Relics update, it feels like some of the Stone Guardians, the Colossal Relics, Stone Monsters, and even maybe the bartering aspect of things are going to be part of Light No Fire as well. These new enemies have definitely seemed to have been influenced by the new enemies and possible combat that will be introduced in Light No Fire. So it's nice to get a bit of a taster on how it will be and how these enemies will behave, even though, of course, your character and weapons in No Man's Sky will be significantly different between the two games, but aesthetically, they certainly seem consistent with Hello Games' next installment. So why would Hello Games actually be doing this? Well, I think one of the reasons, or maybe even the main reason, is testing out these features and technologies on a live, constantly evolving game with thousands of players being able to give them feedback. So I'm talking about things like what players really like, what they don't like quite as much, along with perhaps giving suggestions about how these things could be improved. I mean, of course, it also involves improving No Man's Sky at the same time and keeping the player base happy there as well, which they certainly are doing, because the latest updates since Light No Fire's announcement, at least, I think have been amazing and totally game-changing, to be honest. Long may it continue. But it does give Hello Games invaluable insight into how these technologies are working, basically, in an existing game. And a lot of good can come from this approach of porting features that will be part of Light No Fire, so, like I said, being able to see them in action in No Man's Sky it makes it a far better experience for us players, but also gives Hello Games that invaluable insight into how things are going, what fans think of them, possible improvements they can make. And all of this will hopefully lead to Light No Fire launching in a much more stable state than what No Man's Sky was, because that was a total disaster of a launch, and Hello Games definitely do not want a repeat of that. I mean, to be fair, a stable launch is becoming less and less common in the gaming industry as a whole these days, with companies rushing the games out. I don't know why. Like, take a look at Cyberpunk 2077 a few years ago. That was on par with the No Man's Sky's awful launch. So having the ability to test these features out on an existing game hopefully stops that from happening. Now, the flip side is, of course, there are some legitimate concerns from some players about Hello Games doing this. The first one I've read is it may make Light No Fire just seem like No Man's Sky with a different skin over it. So the main concern here is that these features being in No Man's Sky can, and possibly do, act as slight spoilers for the new game, so there's a chance that wow factor will be missing in some areas. And you don't want that really, do you? Like, when you see some stuff when the game eventually comes out, you might be thinking, well, that's nothing new, because I've seen it in No Man's Sky. And I do share that sentiment to some degree, mainly with the underwater stuff, but I'm hoping Light No Fire will have all sorts of different things we can discover down there, which are totally different to No Man's Sky. So shipwrecks, for example, you can actually see them in the trailer. I'm all for them porting stuff back, as long as they enhance it for Light No Fire, basically. Another example is the new giant colossal relic you can now see in No Man's Sky. Like, this feels very much like the giant, well, whatever you want to call it from the trailer of Light No Fire has been added into No Man's Sky. And although it doesn't move, the premise seems a little bit too similar for my liking. The equivalent version in Light No Fire was a wow moment for me in the trailer, and I had so many questions thinking, is this a boss? Is it good? Is it bad? What do we do? Etc, etc. But if they're porting all of these things into No Man's Sky, players could just react in the way that says, well, that's nothing new. And then you can talk about the combat side of things with these new stone monsters and guardians from the Relics update. They definitely feel like they've been plucked straight out of Light No Fire and just plonked into No Man's Sky. It's good in the sense that it adds more variety to the combat in No Man's Sky, but does it take it away from the new and hopefully improved combat we'll be seeing in Light No Fire? Quite possibly. Although your player character will be entirely different between the games, so there is that. I'm also hoping that the progression in overall combat will be significantly different and significantly more in depth in terms of the progression and customization, considering Light No Fire is said to have a whole bunch of RPG elements in it. Do you know what this all tells me? It tells me that those features that have been ported back from Light No Fire and into No Man's Sky means that those features have almost been finished, or are finished for Light No Fire, which is a great bonus. Because otherwise, why would they be bringing those features into an existing live game? And what does that mean for No Man's Sky as a game going forward? Now, personally, I think No Man's Sky will still be getting regular new updates, as it has been doing for the last few years, but a lot of them, now not necessarily all of them, but at least some of them are going to involve changes that were originally designed for Light No Fire. So what is my overall verdict on Hello Games doing this? There's definitely a balance that Hello Games need to absolutely nail, in that they don't port too many features from one to the other, because it's going to spoil the excitement for some players and perhaps make No Man's Sky unstable with all this new technology. Like, I don't think it'll spoil the excitement too much for me, because the settings are vastly different between the two games, but they need to leave a lot of surprises and wow moments in Light No Fire, so I'm hoping they don't take it too far. Overall, in the long run, I think adding some features that were designed and built in Light No Fire back into No Man's Sky with a bit of a twist to them is overall a good idea, for the main reason being it reduces the risk of a botched launch for Light No Fire whenever it does eventually come out. It gives the ability for Hello Games to properly assess how these major features perform in a live gaming environment where thousands of players will be using them. It's almost like a beta in some senses, or maybe an early access, and could be another valid name for these features. It's a pretty genius move, I think, by Hello Games, to be completely honest with you, because the feedback they'll be getting from doing this will be invaluable to making Light No Fire the best it can possibly be, and hopefully that means it's a seriously good game. So I'm all for it, but I also understand the small issue that some players may have in that they could be seen as possible spoilers for the game, or meaning that we're going to be going into Light No Fire with less stuff surprising us and less wow factor. So yeah, they need to get the balance right. But now that you know how I feel about Hello Games porting some technology and some features backwards from Light No Fire and sticking it straight into No Man's Sky, I'd love to know your thoughts on it as well. Do you think it's a good idea? Would you rather they kept these features totally separate so that Light No Fire doesn't feel like No Man's Sky in a new skin? Let me know in those comment sections below. And that's all for today, folks. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can now become a channel member as well, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in my next one.